The year was 2019. The world was open and oblivious to the forthcoming pandemic. Gaming had been so dry that year that a From Software project won Game of the Year, and the clandestine prophet began his journey on YouTube. You may be asking, Jurston, who is this enigmatic prophet you speak of? Well, my loyal subscribers, that prophet was none other than myself. I mean, technically, I started YouTube in 2016, but I made those videos on my Xbox, and I would rather the world not see them, so until the world ends, no one will see them. But since it was my freshman year on YouTube, I did like every other small creator trying to seek fame, and I copied one of the biggest people on the platform. Let me correct myself. I copied the biggest creator on the platform, the gaming megalodon himself, Video Game Dunkey. Nothing's really changed, but I digress. Following the footsteps of the YouTube god himself, I made an E3 video. That year had the Cyberpunk 2077 unveil with Keanu Reeves, you know, the one where he did the, you're breathtaking thing. I know you guys remember that shit. But under all the memorable moments and the moments of pure cringe that can never be forgotten, there was this oh so small indie game. That game was called 12 Minutes. At the time, pretty much nothing was known about the game besides its name and its premise. We later find out that it was being published by the same guys that put out What Remains of Edith Finch. And even later on, we'd find out that it was being voice acted by some pretty fucking huge actors. You have James McAvoy, the actor behind the ever so famous role of Mr. Tumnus in the first Narnia movie. The wannabe Skywalker bitch from the worst Star Wars trilogy to date, Daisy Ridley. And Willem Dafoe, known widely for his role as Ryuk in the Death Note movie and Harry Osborn's dad in the first Spider-Man film. With a cast like that, there's no way the game could be bad, right? One reason I feel a lot of story-driven games aren't perceived well is because the developers focus so much on the narrative experience that they forget they're making a game. Games from companies like Telltale, Quantic Dream, and Supermassive Games have some of the most compelling stories to hit the gaming world. And whenever I feel the need to enjoy a semi-interactive movie, I jump to these games immediately. But from an objective standpoint, they're just bad games. When you compare their boring gameplay and amazing stories to games who succeed on both ends like Cyberpunk and Red Dead, it's hard to excuse the tedious products these companies produce. So the question that arises is, where does 12 Minutes fall into this category? Is its gameplay on the level of The Walking Dead or The Last of Us 2? I hate to say this, but it's worse than both of those. The game that it probably resembles closest is The Sims 2, and even that is a bit better to play than this. The only way to get around is to click somewhere in the room or click an object and walk towards it. And when the character starts walking, no matter if it's your character or an NPC, the first step always stutters. The following steps are anywhere close to normal either, but it somewhat smooths out. But on the opposite end of shitty animations, the few action scenes that take place are pretty well done. When you try to attack the cop, it's always a fluid motion. When you make actions with another character, fluid motion. And when you try to game end yourself, the movements of lifelessness during your last moments are pretty fucking realistic. But back to attacking the cop for a second. Your character says that you can't attack him head on, so the only logical conclusion is to try and sneak attack him. The amount of times that I tried to get behind that nigga and it would just do the head first attacking animation is outrageous. There definitely shouldn't have been a voice line that alludes to you being able to do it if you actually couldn't.
You gotta stop fighting that guy.
I promise you, bro. I actually like this game, just let me get all my frustration out, okay? My final gripe with the game is its lack of tips and helpfulness. It kind of throws you into this ultra complicated mystery and is like, you'll figure it out, bro. I believe in you. I don't play a lot of mystery games, and maybe that makes my brain extremely small, but towards the last few loops, I was so confused on what to do, bro. And the final pieces of the puzzle were so small that if I hadn't looked it up, I would have been sitting there for 10 plus hours. Felt good to get that all out. Now I feel better about praising this glorified choose your own adventure game. For all the game's shortcomings in the game department, the one place this shit shines like no other is within its story. The first interaction between your character and his wife is one of complete love and care. It makes you feel welcomed. It makes you feel safe. It's extremely impressive how Ridley and McAvoy are able to convey the feelings of their characters with such ease. Within the first 3 minutes of the game, you can really feel the love between the characters. But after the first 6 minutes of the game, this loving and welcoming atmosphere is disrupted by a third party. Someone claiming to be a police officer comes in and your life comes crumbling down. This is where your seemingly endless time loop begins. From there, you continue through multiple scenarios, uncovering secret after secret every loop and applying it to the same interactions, but in different loops. In total, there are only 12 loops, but it took me about 6 hours to beat the game. This was partly due to me just, exploring different outcomes and having fun, because that's what you're supposed to do with games. But it was mainly due to the fact that I hit a massive fucking wall towards the last few loops. Like I said earlier, the lack of guidance in solving the puzzles gets really annoying towards the end, because the pieces to complete the puzzle just become smaller and smaller. At this point in the game, my irritability reached an all-time high. The clearness of the solutions had diluted to an almost impossible level. I had figured the puzzle out in my head, but I didn't know how to apply it in the game, which made my disdain towards it increase even more. I eventually realized that this was on purpose. Every time the loop would restart, your character would verbally and physically express how annoyed he was, which would also increase the negative feelings of the player towards the game.
I don't know. I just don't know.
Right before I did the action to get what I thought was the final loop, I felt a massive sense of relief. The fact that this endless loop was over erased any irritabilities I had about the game. It was going to be a bittersweet ending for me and the characters of the game. The night would progress as it normally should have. This loving marriage was to remain just that. But right when I thought it was all over, the loop began again.
What? No. No. What else do I did everything right. I did everything right.
In this oh so brief 10-second segment, McAvoy steals the show with his extreme emotional performance of pure terror, sadness, and confusion. And man, does it make you feel crazy. This was the ending that I wanted. This was the ending that everyone wanted. But it wasn't how the book was actually supposed to close on this story. There was still so much more to be found out. The reason I thought the loop was happening wasn't the reason at all. It was so much fucking more. Upon figuring out what the game was truly telling me, partly due to the help of a IGN guide, I became extremely sad. It forces you to make a moral and ethical decision about love, but the idea of choice the game gives you the whole way through is completely stripped away. Not because your previous choices didn't matter, but because there's only one right answer to the question. As much as I tried to figure out a way to make the wrong answer work, it just wouldn't. I understood how the main character felt. He was helpless in this situation, and no matter what he wanted, there was only one real conclusion. I legitimately teared up because for all my trying, it just wasn't possible for the game to end the way I wanted.
I really love you, you know?
I do know.
12 Minutes is a truly captivating narrative that explores love from a moral and ethical standpoint. It faces you with a situation you never actually be a part of yourself and forces you to do the right thing. It has its shortcomings with its gameplay, but fuck is its story phenomenal. When trying to figure out how I'd rate the experience, I really struggled, but now that I've gotten all my thoughts out, it's clear how amazing this game is. I've sat with the conclusion and the way it's made me feel for the past couple days, and I can't rid myself of the sorrow that encapsulates me when I think about it. 12 Minutes will go down as one of the greatest narrative indie game experience of my entire life. I'd probably put it up there with two of my favorite indie games of all time, Disco Elysium and Divinity Original Sin 2, which means that 12 Minutes is just as great.